All right, so in this video what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using Pythagoras' theorem again, but today we're going to be looking at finding a short side. So a short side being A or B instead of the hypotenuse, which is C. Okay, so in today's lesson, the learning intention is to use our knowledge of Pythagoras' theorem to find the length of a short side. So that's the specific difference in today. So same as the last couple of videos, it is knowing the formula, labeling the sides. The difference is you need to either be able to rearrange the formula or know an alternate formula to find a short side. So that's a key difference today. You also need to be able to substitute and solve, but that's what we've been doing in our previous ones. So the main difference is knowing that the formula is slightly different to find a short side. Okay, so for our first example, we're going to have a triangle. You're going to be given a right angle. You're going to be given 7 meters here, and we'll make this 12 meters here. Right, so already you can see that there's a difference in the way that we've labelled the triangle. The difference being that we've been given the length of a hypotenuse. How do we know it's the hypotenuse? It's opposite the right angle, okay? Opposite the right angle. So we still need to write our formula out. We still need to label our sides. It's really important to label your sides so that you know whether you are finding the hypotenuse or whether you are finding a short side. So we've already discussed that this is the hypotenuse. I'm going to make this A and I'm going to make this B. Remembering A and B are interchangeable. It doesn't matter which one's which, so long as that you've labelled your hypotenuse correctly. All right, so from the way I've labelled my triangle, I can see I'm trying to find B, which means I'm trying to find a short side. So what you need to do is make B the subject. So at the moment, we're trying to find, this formula will give us C squared because it's telling us that that's what we'll find because C is on its own. What we need to do is get B on its own so that we can find B. So in order to do that, you need to just know a little bit about basic algebra. So what we're essentially going to try and do is move this over here so that we get B on its own. We're getting A and taking it away from this side and putting it over here. So the key word in that sentence was take away. So what we're going to do is we're going to take away A squared and pop it over here. So what we'll end up with is B squared equals C squared take away A squared, okay? So if we knew that if we combined these together, we'd get this, when we learned A and B give us C, when these combine together, we get this. To get one of the ones that's missing, we need to get the big side and take off a small side to see what's left over, essentially is what we're doing. If the rearranging part is confusing for you, then it might be worthwhile for you to just understand that when we find a short side, we have to use this formula, okay? So you might want to make a note that this is what we do when we're trying to find a short side, remembering A and B are interchangeable, okay? So in our example, we don't know what B is, so we're going to leave B as B squared. We know what C is 12, so we're going to make this 12 squared. Take away, don't forget that it's a takeaway, subtraction in the middle. A is now going to be 7, so we're going to get 7 squared here. Okay, so this is another thing that might be worthwhile pointing out for you, remembering that now what we're doing in order to find a short side is a subtraction. That's also a good way of remembering it. Short side, subtraction. Okay, so short side, subtraction. Okay, an easy way for you to remember that. All right, B squared is 12 times 12 is 144. Take away 7 times 7 is 49. If you don't know what that is on the top of your head, you use your calculator to help you. Okay, that's going to be 95. Are we done? No, because it wouldn't make sense for this to be 95 because it's a short side. It's got to be shorter than 12. That's what we need to remember. This side has to be shorter than 12. So To get b on its own, we've got to do the inverse of squaring, which is finding the square root. So to find the square root of 95, we use our calculator, square root of 95. If we're rounding to 2 decimal places, we're going to look at this third digit in the decimal place is a 6, which tells us to round up. So it's going to be 9.75. 9.75 meters. Now remember, at the end, we have to pause and we have to think, does this answer make sense? We said it has to be less than 12. That makes sense. If it had been something like 13, 14, 500, obviously we wouldn't have done it correctly. But 9.75 makes sense. Okay, for our second example, we're going to have a really funny looking triangle here. Nice, skinny, incy triangle. Okay, so what we might do is we might say that this is 2.4 here, and then this we're going to say is 11.6. Okay, you'll notice this time I haven't put any units on it, as in centimetres, metres, because sometimes there's just going to be questions where there's no centimetres, metres, or whatever. It might be feet, yards, who knows. So, first thing we need to do is write down our formula. So I'm going to write it like this to start with, because sometimes you won't know if you're trying to find a long or a short. So I'm going to write it like that to start with. The next thing I'm going to do, I forgot to add in my right angle. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label my sides A, B, and C. So remembering the hypotenuse is the longest side and it's opposite the right angle. So that is C. This I'm going to make B and this I'm going to make A. It doesn't really matter which is A or B. This time I've made the unknown A. All right, so this time if A is the unknown, I'm trying to find A. So what I really want is A squared equals something else. For something else, we're getting rid of this B. We're going to take it away and put it over this side. So I'm going to get C squared minus B squared. Again, if this is something you feel is confusing for you, the rearranging of the formula, then you just need to remember that this is the formula we use when we're trying to find a short side. Okay? And remember we talked about in the last example, the short side being a subtraction. This is the bit we're all confident with. We need to do our substitution. We don't know what A is, that's what we're trying to find. So we write A squared. C, we do know what C is. It's 11.6. So we're going to make it 11.6 squared. Take away, subtraction, minus, whatever word you prefer. B squared is going to be 2.4 squared. Next step, we need to do the actual sum. So 11.6 squared, I don't know what that is, so I need to use my calculator. That's going to be 134.56 minus 2.4 squared, 5.76. Now we need to do our subtraction. 134.56, take away 5.76. That's going to give us 128.8. All right, this is where we think, are we done? No, we're not, because this side here has to be shorter than the hypotenuse. And if the hypotenuse is 11.6, our answer needs to be less than 11.6. So we need to do the inverse of this. The inverse of squared is the square root, 128.8. Square root, 128.8 is 11 point. If we're going to do it, if the question asks you for one decimal place, if the question provides you with one decimal in the question, then we should assume that in the answer we'll just go to one decimal place as well. So this says 11.349 etc. So we only want one decimal place. So we look at 3, 4. The 4 tells us we need to round down. So it's going to be 11.3. Now, does this make sense? It is very close to the hypotenuse. It's still shorter than the hypotenuse, so that is okay. That means our answer is correct. And if you can see from my example, obviously this isn't to scale, but these sides both are quite similar in length in this example. Okay, so that's how we know we've done this one correctly. Okay, hopefully by now you're feeling really, really confident and knowing how to do a short side. So we've got one more that we're going to do. I've got a right angle. This one's going to be 14.03. Trying to make it a little bit more interesting. This one is going to be, let's say, 9.16. And then we leave one side blank. Step 1, write out the formula. Step 2, label the sides. This is opposite the right angle, so it has to be C, which means we're going to make one of these B and one of these A, remembering the short sides are interchangeable. It does not matter. So we're trying to find A, so I need to make A the subject of my formula. So I'm going to go A squared equals C squared minus B squared. Remembering, if we're trying to find a short side, we need to do a subtraction. All right, now we're up to substitute. A, we don't have anything for, that's what we're trying to find. C, I'm going to change it to 14.03 squared. B, I'm going to change it to 9.16 squared. This is where we need our calculator. 14.03 squared is 196.8409. 9.16 squared is 83.9056. These are obviously 4 decimal places. We probably could have just gone to 3 decimal places if we wanted to, but knowing that my answer, I'll need to give it in 2 decimal places because there's 2 decimal places in the question. So A squared is, we need to do the subtraction, 196.8409. Take away 83.9056 is going to give us 112.9353. We're not done yet. We need to get rid of this squared. In order to get rid of that squared, we need to do the square root of this number. So the square root of 112.9353. So the square root, I can just type answer here if I want on my calculator and it'll use the previous answer. Your calculator should have that feature somewhere. So this will give me 10 point. Now, I said that I want 2 decimal places in my answer because there's 2 decimal places in my question. So 6 to 7. 7 tells us we need to round up, so it becomes 6.3. Thinking, does my answer make sense? Looking back at the question, the hypotenuse is 14.03. My side length needs to be less than that. This is less than that, and it still makes sense. That's how we know we've done it correctly. So, thinking back to the learning intention and success criteria of this lesson, the learning intention was using the formula Pythagoras Theorem to find a short side. The success criteria is knowing the formula, labeling the sides, rearranging the formula, substituting, and solving to find the unknown side. So if you can do all of those things, you've met today's success criteria.